Hello, welcome to the Square Base Show. On this triumphant return, me and Mr. Val Heffelfinger will be talking about terrain and is this the hill that we shall die on? Welcome to Square Base.
Square Base Show. Square Base Show. Square Base Show. Excuse me.
SBS in the house.
SBS. Yep, I'm in.
SBS. So, yes, if you are joining us, watching this back as a video, or listening to this as a podcast, we have been away for a couple of weeks. Interestingly, It was meant to be a small break. However, as we did not. That did not happen. Still made a couple of YouTube videos. There's still some videos out there. You know, we've done some faction reviews and other stuff. But for the Square Base Show, Triumphant Return, Val was on holiday for a week, and then unfortunately, while he was down there, he was setting up an illegal renegade production ring. I think it was a printer farm to just keep illegally producing wood elf archers. I think that's what I heard. But
that's it. Only the 4th edition monopose ones, though. They're very popular in Latin America. Yes.
How are you? Welcome back. You have been away and you've been sick. Which is
feels, rubbish. As Marshall Mathers once said, it feels so good to be back. Yes. I was a little ill, quite ill, and if the live viewers of the show got to hear the sort of details of my illness, but it was a week, and then a week of being down in the tropics. Now we're back. I've actually received a few messages of, "Are you guys okay? Have you stopped doing the podcast?" Like we've gone for 2 weeks, and people are so thirsty. It's
never
fantastic.
Stop. Yeah, that's actually really sweet. Thanks, everyone. No, we should have probably done more updates, which is on me. Actually, one of my jobs today is to do a little bit of an update. Pretty exciting that you're back, but rubbish that you were sick.
Rubbish, I say. But you know what? These things happen. Ultimately, I'm primed to make a full recovery. And I'm so excited to talk about some stuff. What are we talking about? What is going on here? Where are we? What is this?
Square Base Show. Well, I know before we get into the details, into the nitty gritty, you've been playing some games, so I'd like to ask you about that.
Oh my goodness, have I been playing some games?
But today's show. Now listen.
Yes, I'm listening. Yes, I'm listening.
I'm going to say the show's about terrain. You're going to be like, I'm not going to listen to this. This will be so boring. Okay, and I understand because it isn't. Can you get a dragon? You know, our dragon's OP. What happens if you don't put everything in a line? Instead, it's a triangle. Yeah, I understand.
Triangular hammer.
A triangular hammer. Like, I understand. But I promise you, it's an important conversation. And especially from my position, like right now, it's been a very interesting convo. So,
and what position would that be, Robert?
As a tournament organizer, Mr. Val Heffelfinger, the most boring.
I've got
jobs.
the sound. I've got the international mating call of the tournament organizer queued up here.
Please.
There we go.
It's so boring. I've been so mad because as you've been like, when you were sick, you were like, Robbo, I'm dying. I'm like, this sucks. And then you were like, I'm back. I'm playing games. I'm like, I'm so jealous, bro. But I know the circumference of a tree now. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about you and your games first. While in convalescence, like the English patient, you have been recovering and playing some games. Talk to me about all of that.
I've been making great use of, as mentioned previously on the show, warhol.eu, my favorite way to play online. And it should be yours as well, because it's just a fantastic platform and has allowed me to play with friends of mine from all over the damn place. I played with my buddy Garrett, who helped me out massively when I was doing the LVO streams in the last couple of years. I played Peter the Falcon. I played Adam Camilleri. I played Tech Priest Dicky, and I've beat them all, Robert. I've beat them all.
I've heard you are an undefeated streak. Yes.
You know what the secret is? The secret is just say, "Oh, this is just a learning game." You know, we're just going to pick up the things, and then you just come and you just crush them with questioning everything that they have and some ridiculous good luck. Also, Peter the Falcon has pointed out to me that indeed he did beat me once. But I just choose not to remember that. So I'm undefeated as far as I'm concerned.
That's congratulations. Being undefeated in online.
Undefeated in online learning games. That's me.
That's good. You should be really
But I will say I did an interview with the developer of of Warhol. We're going to release that later this week. There's some exciting news in there, including, in fact, why don't we do the promo code here? Because if people are using it, we will. We've got a wonderful promo code that they've done for 25% off. We talk about a cool tournament that they're doing, like a good, like a learning tournament. They're doing 1,500 points, international thing with some cool prizes. So I'd highly recommend that you check that out. I'll put the information in the show notes, and then we'll do a nice detailed show about Warhol if you don't know what it is or are curious later this week.
Interestingly, just for everyone, it's not like a sponsorship. It's just a deal that's being offered by Warhol through us, which I think is really nice. So no kickbacks. It's just a situation where you are going to get something for listening to the show, which I think is super nice and really good of the dev. You said the dev's a lovely guy?
Oh, Hugo is such a lovely man. He's actually, I've had in my back pocket a spare ticket for the Square Bass GT coming up on Easter weekend, Old World to Resurrection. And it's like, hey, would you want to come play? And he's like, yes. And so he's coming from Spain. He's going to come over and play. So the creator of Warhol coming to the TSN.
Yeah, pretty good.
It's going to be pretty sweet. But no, he's a really lovely guy. And I think that's why I really want to do an interview with him, because I think sometimes, whether it's, Battlescribe's a bad example, but like, I don't know. Anytime someone does something for the community and is like, including tournament organizers, they often get...
It can't be every time. It can't be every time.
Including tournament organizers, if they try and make some of their expenses back, through ticket prices or whatever, people get suspicious. And I think it's really important that you guys meet this guy, because he's a person who just loves playing Warhammer like anybody, and like anybody who organizes events, makes cool tools or anything like that. Generally speaking, it's because they want the thing, right? They want to be able to play the game in a different way, or have the tool to use, or see people enjoying themselves. So I think it's really lovely that he was shy to necessarily come on and do an interview, but I'm glad he did, because he's a really great guy, and I think everyone will like him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I like the humanization of it. Because when people have hidden behind stuff, Battlescribe is a good example of being hidden from the community, but being part of the community. Yes. I mean, deciding to I
believe the mailing address for Battlescribe is a belfry somewhere.
No, it's not. It's in Barbados, where he's living it up, having the best life. But
Turks and Caicos, Cacos.
But he's But yeah, humanizing someone is really good. And then offering something that already, we talked about this on a previous show, where we said that there's all these tools available. So offering something to the community and, using us, or getting us to be able to be a voice out for people, I think is great. So good. And then you've been playing on it a lot, and you've been playing a bunch of try hard practice games. Love that energy. And I know that you've also been practicing Perfect, right? Or trying to practice Perfect. How have you found that?
Well, I think it's been really, every single game, I will admit this, when you're playing in a focused way, trying to get rules right and not necessarily letting anything go by. And I hope I can shift gears a little bit to be less of a pedant, because there is a line, right? There's you want to get the game right, but there's also a line of questioning everything. And I'll get out of that mode once I've questioned everything. But there's a lot to question. And so as we've been playing, we've been finding a lot of really interesting edge cases and unusual rule situations and interactions, and going back and forth on rulings. Have been feeding back a lot of this, through various sorted channels, hopefully to get some questions answered in an upcoming fact that may or may not be coming. Hopefully, rumor has it. Been doing my best to practice as close to it correctly as I can. And I've been streaming the games, at least my desktop anyway, to the Squarebase Patreon,
Discord,
and the Discord. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And members of chat, especially for whatever reason from Australia, have been really huge and just hanging out while I guess they're in their workday listening. And we'll be in the middle of doing something like, oh, well, actually, it's something like this, I believe. You might want to do it that way. I'm like, yes. So I guess maybe I am developing the fourth pronoun in helping me. Maybe I'll have to stream my IRL games as well, just so I can have somebody like, Val, you're doing something else. It's fantastic.
Well, that's good. That's lovely. I would desperately love to check some of those out. I've been, like I say, doing the dimensions of hills and other elements, but I'm glad you've been enjoying the game, other than trying to practice perfectly, which is something I also encourage. Interesting you said about FAQ as well. Sorry, just to have two thoughts at once.
Yeah, please.
I had to do an FAQ for an upcoming event that we have over not we have here at the arena, but locally there's an event which is like a beginner's event with like 1,500 points, and it's about, I don't know, they've got up to like 30 players playing, and then they were just like, I have a bunch of questions, Rob. Can you just give me a yes or no on these? So that was a fun little situation. Some of them were fine. Some of them were like not fine, and some of them were like, cool. Here's a decision, and it's always nice to give some sort of decision, or at least help a little bit, or at least be part of a conversation.
It's great, and I go back and forth on this because a lot of there is a lot of like, why is this complicated? Like this could have been so much cleaner or whatever in me. But also there is a special joy in trying to figure out these riddles that I have missed. I think I'd probably rather not have them, but I also genuinely do enjoy having to try and figure out rules interactions or lean on friends to help me understand them, because often all of us will often just miss the last line of something. Like Peter the Falcon was talking about how he was playing stubborn. He was like, stubborn's dumb. Why would you do stubborn? Like, if you're outnumbered, you still have to like fall back. Like you'll still break and flee. And like, and then on the show, Old World Charmed, one of his co-hosts, Danny, was like, no, dude, like read the last line. It says that you always fall back in good order. Like like it was literally the last line says in Stubborn that you can always fall back in good order, which is the whole point of Stubborn.
It's the point.
But Peter just missed it, right? Like, and like these are guys who are like all-star pedants. So like they're everyone's learning. It's another reason why I really love Warhol, is because it can be very communal and it's perfect. It's perfect information. So like you can see all your auras. You can see, the line arcs of sight. You can see how wheels are measured. You can do center to center fleas properly. And by being able to see what it looks like, and it's perfect, I'm hoping that helps me translate it to the table a little bit better too, so that I can spot like, oh wait, I didn't measure this wheel right, or whatever. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun practicing and getting a lot more cozy with the rules and with the orcs and goblins. I've been having a lot of fun iterating my lists, and I enjoy it. I think I've got all the models for it. Ironically, despite how much stuff I already have, like of course, a good 2/3 of the list I want to run now is unpainted, but I have the models. And
you have an event coming up.
Yeah, Saturday, X Planet Games. Lionel Miranda is suffering the indignity of hosting Warhammer Fantasy event at his shop. A famous AOS nerd, and that's mutually exclusive. AOS guys are great.
How dare you? How dare you?
AOS guys are great. Mutually exclusive. Just Lionel, tremendous nerd, professional nerd, in fact, and otherwise known as a great guy. Can't wait to go to his shop and play some actual in-person Warhams.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well, that sounds fun. Yeah, that's kind of where my head's been at the minute. I've been in the physical world with several events coming up. And so it's kind of the purpose of today's show, kind of like talk about some of the bits that we've been working towards. It's fun as well. I will shout out that talking about chief pedantry, I have decided that I'm going to speed run, get into blocked from all Old World Facebook groups. That's my goal now. Like speedrun blocks. Right? Like I tried to reason. Go
ahead. Tell me your experience. Give me your experience.
Just this
please.
Morning before the show started, it's kind of like jumping off what you said. Like Pete, as we know, is very fastidious in reading stuff. Yeah, as I think I am as well. However, that doesn't mean you can't continuously make mistakes with this game.
Yes.
And it's a very high level of effort to require some consistent system mastery. And I did an Orcs and Goblins video last week. I've done Dwarfs, Chaos Dwarfs over the past couple of weeks.
Yes.
I just recorded Ogres last night. And in several of those videos, people have been like, hey, Rob, by the way, this. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. That makes a lot of sense. What about this bit? I'm like, you're absolutely right. So I think they're very good. Like, I don't think they're 100%. I think they're like 90% plus, pretty solid, which I'm quite proud of. But even then, like, I walk away from them being like, Like, I walked away from Orcs and Goblins being like, okay, Fanatics are very, very, very good. That's why I walked away from it. But then I had to like put it into context of writing a list, put it on the tabletop. You and me had done a chat where we talked through some of your Orcs and Goblins lists, and then like not online, and then well, it was online but not public, sorry. And then I'd also then like another little like chat with a bunch of people from England who like just are my friends who play Old World, but they're all AOS kind of like they're all AOS Worlds players actually. Who are now playing Old World, but they're all new to it. So it's really refreshing. They played no Warhammer Fantasy Battle, so now I'm getting this kind of amazing like series of insights from fresh minds. And they're just like, and last night I was like, ogres, let's go, ogres. How many Stonehorn? And they were like, hey, Rob, we're way ahead of you. We got like 3 Stonehorns. We're doing this. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Oh baby,
yeah.
I remember when I first read the ogres, the first thing I did was like, how many points per toughness 6 wound are they paying? Yeah. If you got a hunter on top of a Stonehorn, like that's got to be one of the cheapest T6 wounds you can get.
Yeah.
And with a tremendous amount of output, and also it's a Stonehorn. It is so cool. I don't know about AOS, but certainly in fantasy, I have never been able to get them on the table before. I mean, I sure could have, but I never did because I tried too hard. So I am super excited to run a Tyrant on Stonehorn at a minimum. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe some other fun shit. Who knows?
Yeah, so it's been this kind of continual kind of growth. But my point was just to speed run. I accidentally this morning before the show, I opened up an Old World Facebook group, and the top comment I saw was easily one of the stupidest things I've seen written on the internet. And I read a lot of the internet, and also I publicly discuss things on the internet. So myself say some pretty stupid stuff.
Well, I might say you live on the internet.
Right, but then
now tell me, what was the stupidest comment you've ever read?
Oh no, it was just a conversation about like 1990 points to 1,000 points, which, in hindsight, I feel very comfortable saying this. In hindsight, you and me,
we may have done that.
We had a conversation about it, but now in hindsight, I think that there's a really good argument for both. And and there's even more conversation about like others comp. There's conversations about no comp, and I think they're all healthy, and we can revisit them in a couple of months. But I've picked a couple of ways that I want to run the events, which I've got like I was telling you last night, 5 events over the next 3 months sold out at the arena. So I'm going to be absolutely flooded with Old World info and stuff, which is going to be really, really fun. And I'll get loads of feedback from the players, and then I feel like I'll be more informed to discuss it. But it was just like, this is dumb. And then immediately someone replied with, I've never laughed so much. Someone was like, yeah, well, if I do 2,000, I'll take 2 dragons. And the other guy was like, I'll take 70 poison arrows. And I was like, and I replied, are you 5? That's what I replied. I was like, are you 5? And then I screen capped it, and then I just posted it back in the group. I was like, you can't let adults have conversations like this in front of other people. You can't. This just not I was 19, I was a doorman. I had to be like, look, I know you're an adult man who's been working all week, but you can't do pull-ups on a bar. You just have to not do that inside of a bar. You can't piss in a corner. Sometimes you have to be like, you can't do this. Stop doing stupid shit. And I've never laughed so much in my life. And shout out to go on.
What that reminds me of, I can't remember if this is a bit from our actual show or if this was from one of our conversation, but sometimes it does sound a lot like, the breathless 8-year-old, and you described it as like, well, I shoot you with my gun and then I bring up my invisible shield. And invisible shield, defeats all. And sometimes that is how it goes. And so settle it on the tabletop, kids. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Dice, figure it out.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, I don't think that particular exchange fundamentally, which is like 2 dragons is OP, and then somebody like, no, it isn't. I'll bring my invisible shield. That is actually just the way Warhammer works, right? And until it actually is played out, we don't necessarily know whose shield is real and what is actually problematic. And in playing a lot so far, I think monsters are a thing, which is, I think, good. Certainly makes the armies a lot smaller and more manageable to make. We'll see ultimately how that balance works, but I don't think that they're so dominant that they're the only thing that can possibly win, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how it all shakes out in the in the long run, but the games I've been playing have felt very healthy, and engaging and interesting. Says guy who runs 2 wyverns.
Is that you? Is that you?
Yeah.
You can
Not only two, I have 2 wyverns and 2 level 4 casters. Good times.
Not to say my invisible shield, but I have my favorite list now of all time. Now I've done a Chaos Dwarf review. There's just there's a magic item that makes units within range not have the levy keyword anymore. Right? It's like Grungy's. No, it's not Grungy's beard. It's like the overseer's beard or the overseer's mask or something. And then I was like, how many Hobgrots can I get? So now I've written a list. I really want to play with you on Warhol.
There's a Warhol. That is a Warhol list.
Yeah. Right. Where it's just 150 Hobgrots, and then behind it is 2 Dreadquakes, 2 Deathshriekers, and all I do is just dump templates on you until the end of time. Is it good? No. And that'll be like my first GT list most likely. Yeah, I'm aiming to cause chaos in a way no one's caused chaos.
Of course, Rob, the man with so much spare time, picks a list that requires the creation of 150.
No, it isn't. I've already done the math. It's literally just I'll do the outer edge as Hobgrots, and then the middle will just be a unit.
The middle is just some sort of middle finger 3D printed. Excellent.
It's still quite a lot of Hobgrots even at that point. But anyway, okay. So with you playing games and then me doing the boring TO stuff, let's talk about that, shall we? So if kind of to tip the show off, we're going to be talking through terrain. However, the important part is that just like the 99, 2000, Magic, a bunch of other stuff, this is an ongoing conversation which will develop and improve. And comments that you leave here, people in our Discord have been super helpful. So everyone on Patreon, I posted this last week, and they were all like, just giving me feedback and stuff, and I really appreciate that. So I want to thank you to all of those people as well. But one of the things I have done is because I have an event, so I have to make some decisions. So even though we're going to be talking through terrain, I've already made decisions. So if you go onto the honestwargamer.com, and if you just type into old world and terrain, and I'll obviously include these in the show notes.
I certainly will.
There is, yes, you will. There is some old world terrain guidelines for events that I'll be running, so they're just easy. There's an FAQ before you even have to ask me any questions, which is fun. There is maps which are freely available. These are all free. So I've done maps, or I've done the maps. Tom's made the maps. So shout out to Tom. So there's maps, and for each mission there are 3 iterations of maps. And what happens is the terrain placement doesn't change, but what happens, what I've set up, is that the terrain type just changes initially. And then we're going to read through terrain in a bit, but there were some like immediate stipulations that I kind of like made. Generally, it says don't have terrain in the middle and some other stuff. These 7-inch markers that generally are knocking around is so that we did a reasonable size unit, so that's like 7 by like a unit 7 wide, like or 5 by 30 or something, or a cavalry unit is going to be able to move through there, but you won't be able to move a horde through there. There's some stipulations, so there was some thought put into that on these. Also, at my events, I'm going to run. I've called it the terrain picking system, the TPS. The TPS.
TPS, all right.
The TPS on the SBS, which is fun. Let me know what you think about this, because maybe a conversation for the end, but there isn't a solution, because me and my friend helped me create this, and he's a big old world player. I play a lot of Warhammer Fantasy, and we got down and we had a lot of arguments, and we were like, well, if we do this, that's going to negatively affect this army and positively affect this army. If we do this, then it's going to do this. So there really wasn't a best fit solution, and so I've gone for the solution where no one's happy. That's what I've decided. That's my new system. No one's happy, right?
It's usually a good system.
It's a good system.
It's a competitive situation, yeah.
And so one of the things that I've put in place is the TPS. So you and me will play. You and me will play, and what will happen is roll a dice for terrain, start the game. If I lose, I lose. I just veto one of the 3 maps. And then you as the winner, you get to choose from one of the 2 maps.
Okay.
Right? So that way, if you are playing, let's say, Wood Elves, I'll just be like, cool, I'm not going to let that be a forest there, like, or whatever. Yeah, if you're playing dwarfs, I'm gonna be like, cool. I don't want you to have a hill in your deployment, and get rid of that one. And then you go, okay. But then I'm going to choose from the other two. So there's like you're not happy because I've vetoed the one that's good for you, and then you choose the one that's best for you. So I'm not happy. Therefore, everyone's not happy.
That's fantastic. So I have a question now.
Yeah.
So like, is that so? The veto is determined by a roll off. Now, does that roll off also determine who gets to pick sides, or is it separate?
They're symmetrical, so it doesn't matter.
Ah, okay, cool. Also controversial for some people.
I'm sure it is.
Now, I mean, yes, TPS is excellent, but this sounds a bit like player picked terrain. Not necessarily placed.
Not placed.
But so it's a PPT, if you will.
It's also, and just for us and for everyone at home, we'll keep this between ourselves, so don't tell anyone. It's just the fucking illusion of choice. Yeah, like I actually don't want you to choose as a TO.
Yes, of course.
Right.
Yes, of course.
Right. As a player, you want to pick.
Yes, the illusion of choice is fantastic. I think that is what the world needs more of. But as an autocrat, I enjoy the illusion of choice, especially whenever I'm doing anything organized and trying to lead people to do things. So yeah, on its face, I think this sounds fantastic. I think what's really awesome is that, you know what, you've gone out, you've taken your best shot, you've put together a system that you like, and now we're gonna put it in the crucible. We're gonna test it because, like you said, you've got 5 events.
Yeah,
we're also gonna have these set up as default map options to be used on, again, Warhol.eu. And they're running a pretty massive event, that 1,500 point tournament that we can enter into. We're going to be doing Patreon stuff. So within 2 months, we're going to be able to have a lot of really good data, a lot of really good like actual feedback, not like feel back, but like feedback from like people playing the games and test them out, seeing if maybe there are, more obvious choices than others need to be tweaked. So I think this is a fantastic thing, and kudos to you for getting it all organized and put together, man.
I appreciate that. One last bit on this before we do get into the nitty gritty. Also on the same website, again, for free, if you'd like to make this a little simpler for yourself, there are a bunch of card templates that you can print out at home and make yourself like some playing cards. And then, you and your friends don't need to like keep referencing the website. It's all on the website, which is obviously much easier. But also if you want to kill some trees.
Do you have the terrain like footprints on a printable template as well?
So now that's actually as a TO, that's actually I answered that in FAQ, but that's actually one of those really, really complicated questions, because as soon as you dictate, and that's what I never wanted to do. I have to run an event, therefore I have to do something. I do already have terrain. But I now am in the process of printing 74 trees or something insane, right? Yeah. For forests and hills, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But so other people will be like, Rob, I already have 20 forests, or I've already got this. So I don't want to do something you say, fuck you. And that's super fair, right? I really, really agree with that. So, you've got to be conscious that there are people at home, that's their forest that they have at home. There are local gaming stores who don't have the money, time, or energy to redo their terrain stock. So it was just a generic, this is how far it is away from the board edge and from each other, versus like this is the template. Like maybe long term that could be something that we do, but also I really don't want to affect creativity, because while
I'm saying, like, if literally though, like we could have in that terrain pack you could have a piece of paper. Most terrain is like 8 inches long, like in the rule book. You could literally just have like a nice colorful thing that someone could cut out and like get a practice game on. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, man. But I get what you're saying. You don't want to dictate like this is what terrain looks like. I think that's a fantastic impulse. But we could also have like a literal battlefield in a box or battlefield on a sheet of paper.
No, I think that would also be we could get something you could print out, like as in literally on paper.
That's what I'm saying. I'm literally talking about like on the back of it is our 6 sheets of paper with the outlines of the terrain you're suggesting. So that way people could even test it. Like people could even just try it.
Oh, that's a lovely idea. Yeah, I'll get those made up today, tomorrow. That's what I'll do, and then I'll include that in the same
on my desk first thing tomorrow, Robbo.
Anyway, give me some feedback. They're all free resources for everyone, so I'm sure they're not perfect. They could be changed and made better in the future, but it's a start because I've got events to do,
Yes.
and that's it. So let's talk about terrain. Let's get you in the chat because I apologize about that because making hills and forests is, I honestly think, a huge detracting factor of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and what led to its non-popularity is the production of these things because they are uncreative.
Okay, I'll give you that. Sure.
They are like, it's a hill.
They're pretty basic. Yeah.
What I really wanted to do on a couple of maps was be like 4 buildings, and then my friend fed back's like, no, you're gonna really impact the game, and I was like, yeah, that's fair points. But it's just if it's just a hill is a hill. It's so incredibly uninteresting to make cool when it could be a crystalline tower, a slaver pit where ogres are like chewing on humans. It could be so many cool things.
Always bringing in the human-eating slavers.
Not that slaver pits.
All
are cool.
you ever want to shoehorn into this game is more human-eating slavers. I get it, Rob.
The game is full of that. So
it sure is.
Anyway, right, so terrain. We're going to be talking about terrain now. So these are the main terrain rules from the game. Val has lovely put together in a little spreadsheet for us, and document, and then we can talk through these because there's some interesting points. I know Val's super keen to talk about line of sight stuff as well, which is really, really effective. Okay. First up, you can't kill what you can't see. Should we talk about that?
Look at how well that fits perfectly.
Well done.
This is a recycled slide. We actually have touched on this in a previous sort of like one of our first initial post rules released episodes, but a quick re-primer on line of sight, because line of sight is abstracted compared to other Warhammer games out that we've got going on. And by that I mean that in old world, that models and units always block line of sight. So essentially, if we're looking from a top-down view, if the line of sight goes over or through a model or unit, it is blocked in most situations. So that's why also when you have a shooting unit, only the front rank is able to fire. But yeah, to determine your line of sight, you go down to the model's eye view, and you see, is there any intervening terrain? Because forests and hills and also special features, aka buildings, will block a line of sight. And if so, you can't see through it. Even though when you're on that model's eye view, because in a lot of other games we have what's called true line of sight. If you can see it, you can see it. In old world, that is not necessarily the case, which I think makes for a much more interesting game state on the board. Because by abstracting this, you're able to use units to screen line of sight. You're able to make better use of terrain to protect your units, or use them as very strategic pieces on the board. It makes the line of sight rules, I think, in this makes terrain very relevant. It makes the positioning of your units very relevant. It makes models like large targets that are allowed to look over other intervening models very relevant. I really, really love how the abstracted line of sight rules makes the game play.
Yeah, I think the way that this, when we talk about it later, or talk about it now, the way this interacts with two different things that I've been very conscious of making maps. Number one, buildings and forests, obviously, which I think impassable, something that blocks line of sight as well, in addition. And then the ability to add onto that with vortexes. I think vortexes are going to be very defining in the fact that so again, something when I was looking at the maps, I had to be like, cool, what if someone just puts a vortex between these two bits? And that becomes a real problem in the right situations. And almost
cool problem. That is a cool problem.
Yeah, it's a cool problem. You can have some almost non-player experiences where you could shut down stuff pretty egregiously. But I think that there's a skill level to that, and there's a great conversation there. So I think there's something really, really interesting in that element as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. The fact that you can, it's an interesting. This is actually a point that is sort of right out there in the open, but I've never heard it sort of crystallize. Is you bring your own terrain through the use of a lot of vortices. Like the wood elves are able to sprout forests up. You've got the illusion crystalline whatever temple. It's basically just an impassable piece that you drop down. I'm pretty sure in one of the other ones too, you have one that moves around that also blocks line of sight completely. The summon elemental spirits. So yes, there is a lot of really, really cool ways to do that, mess with your enemy. And sometimes it's impassable. Sometimes it just creates difficult terrain, which is something we'll discuss too, which has a massive impact on the game as well. I love how the difficult terrain rules impact the ability to charge and move and all that stuff.
Yeah. You can the terrain plus vortexes. Terrain on itself is like, okay, that affects the game. Plus vortexes, game changer. With line of sight, also like vortexes is the very aggressive game changer. Line of sight is the more subtle one that you're hinting towards. And I agree with you. Like, that's something to be really conscious of.
I will say with vortices, I think it's also important to remember that it's not a binary thing. There's a lot of counterplay that you have available to you. To either like turn off a vortex, to stop them from being able to happen in the first place. They're not a guaranteed thing that's going to happen. And it's not guaranteed that they're going to stick around as well. And then that also provides the player the opportunity to, because for example, when you place a vortex, you have the opportunity to dispel it at that moment. But then if you're within range of the caster and subsequent at the start of your subsequent turns, you are able to dispel it. So that also gives play from the casting player's perspective of, can I get my caster the hell out of there so that you can't easily dispel some of these things. So I don't know, makes for a lot of fun to me. And yes, they are, very powerful mechanics that although they don't necessarily get you kill points, they don't necessarily get you scores, they allow you to change the game state and shape the battlefield in the way that, is beneficial to you. And I think that's really cool.
I agree. All right, so next slide we got, but sometimes you can sort of see. This is talking about obscured line of sight. Take us through it. Go for it.
So I think the other thing is too, is like, especially for ballistic skill shooting. So that is, when you're rolling to hit, you're firing your crossbows or weapons that people carry. A lot of times you can see a model, but they are obscured. And so partial cover, so that minus, basically if you are partially obscured, so less than half of the model is fully visible. Up to half of the model is obscured by something on the table, be it a unit or a piece of terrain or what have you, they cause a -1 to hit modifier. And if more than half of that unit is obscured, you suffer a -2 to hit modifier. There are things, of course, that can help you overcome this, like, for example, being a wood elf with the right arrow. But it is something that will impact ballistic skill shooting and also elevates the things that don't require ballistic skill to shoot. For example, magic missiles do not require a hit roll and do not suffer from being obscured. And so that is something to always remember.
Yeah, magic missile's so good, right? So hot right now. Yeah, so hot right now. Yeah, really good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's obscured line of sight. Then you got partial cover and full cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
sorry, that's kind of redundant. Partial cover is your -1 to hit, and full cover is your -2 to hit.
I don't think that's redundant. So one of the things that I didn't put in my maps, which I think some people low linear obstacles, things that provide partial cover,
very cool,
and those other things. I don't think that they are necessarily something to remove from the game. I just think that right now I didn't want to overload. Like, I would like to get core mechanics before I add in what if I just chuck in a partial cover? And also, like, I think ballistic skill shooting's kind of like feels a bit naff at the moment. I don't really want to see it on the tabletop, but I don't think I necessarily need there to be a little hill at the moment, or not a little hill, little wall or something. But we'll see, because it does affect melee as well.
So that's actually, so I don't know, as we get into the 7 (9) categories of terrain, which is really funny to me. The thing that I think we'll notice is that almost every single sort of piece of terrain that there is has its own very unique flavor and impact, again, on the game state, on the table. And one of those is low linear obstacles. And so we can talk about it when we get there, for sure.
Perfect. All right, so next up, what does a normal battlefield look like? This is way too painted for a normal battlefield.
Yes, very painted. Actually, some of that is my terrain. And at least one of those is my army. So, hey, cool. This is obviously from the first Square Bass GT.
Woohoo!
I think Rob does get the photography credit here. I used AI to remove a half-eaten salad from the table. I don't know if you can spot the smudge.
Which was additional terrain. Which was additional terrain.
Additional terrain. It was a Vortex in 8th edition. Was just half-eaten salad. But yeah, I just wanted to actually I wanted to say size of battlefield, which is 48 by 72, is the normal surface. I love that. That's the terminology that's been used by JTY. The normal surface. And I was wondering for the arena, I assume you're largely set up for sort of the modern 60 by 44. So what do you feel like you'll be going with?
We have normal size boards. So we use a bracket around an insert normal sized board. So
cool.
So we'll just be playing at the full sized 48 by 72.
Oh wow! We'll be playing some girthy tables. That's awesome. All right, cool.
In fact, I realize now at this point I've only done the maps for that size table, so I really should maybe addendum the maps and say, by the way, this is what they've done for.
That was that I think that would be super awesome.
Thank you for pointing out something an egregious thing I missed there. It was heartbreaking, but okay.
And the next one is how much terrain. I think you actually in your designs factor this in, but essentially on a normal battlefield, you would have about 6 pieces because essentially it's one terrain feature per 12 inches of long table edge, rounded up to the nearest 12. I don't know why you can just say 6 pieces on that amount would be good.
6 pieces. Yes. Yeah, the best guide, one terrain feature per. So it's kind of interesting when you start putting down piece of terrain on a board, because if they're impassable, or they block line of sight, you can really start to mitigate sections of the board. And really, like as a map designer, I'm not calling myself a map designer, but if you were to get down on the table,
but you have designed maps.
Well, yeah, but if you were to do that yourself, one of the things that's quite interesting is because there's also a stipulation that there's no piece of terrain can be within 12 inches of the center or 12 inches from any other piece of terrain. And then as soon as you put that terrain down, you're like, these only really go in very specific places.
Yes.
And then
that is actually, and I should have actually probably put that on the slide, but I did not. That is something I did not pick up on until very recently, that is a stipulation that you must have, according to the rules as written, you must have a big open alley. What is that? A third, more than a third of the table? 48. Yeah, it's a third of the table is wide open at the center of the field.
Yeah, which I think is a throwback. Like, if I'm honest, like looking at the map and having done maps for Age Sigmar, 40k boards at the arena as well, I think one of the things that happens is you look at it and you think, right, okay, so I did the maps pretty much sticking to that, not always sticking to that, and then also I listen. I know it's going to blow some people's mind. I followed the italics in some cases, like Battle for the Pass. I was like, all the terrain's on the edges because it's a battle for the pass. Like, it should be more difficult. It should be a center line that's completely free. But I think in the future there's room to break those rules. I think as a community, definitely later on in the future, there's you put 2 pieces of impassable kind of staggered in the center, one on each side. Immediately you get a very different game. But right now, with the rules as is, there's just a gun line in the middle.
And I mean, yes, and I haven't looked at the actual individual missions to see how they suggest terrain should be dropped, because again, this is just something that I was blinded to. But special features are specifically called out as something that can go in the middle. So those are your buildings, your like monuments, your towers, your big ruins or whatever. So you can have something right in. Pardon me. You can have something dead center that would really change the game, and I really love special features. So yeah.
I immediately. So this is kind of like I've done the work because I have to do work for an event, and then after that I was like, I want to make some narrative packs. Really, really do. You can make some super fun stuff. So we should talk about these as is. Also in the pack you place terrain. Sorry, I should also say not the pack. in Games Workshop's rules and the old world rules,
it's player placed.
It's player placed. It's individual. We're skipping that, and I should probably point that out. It's player placed, and you roll off and you do it individually, which is insane to me. Val, I don't know if you've got a thought on player placed terrain.
No, I think I mean, if for starting up a game with your mate or whatever, and you want to just toss some stuff out on the board, I do think that's totally fine. We had already a contentious back and forth on player place. I think conclusively decided. I think preset maps are cooler. I think too, just from a prep perspective, and also from a meta creation perspective. So there are things as a tournament organizer, you are able to have influence and control over like certain things, and other things are taboo and untouchable. For example, if you think dragons are an issue, either banning them or changing their points, that would be taboo. However, creating a mission pack or a table layout that might help to mitigate monstrous creatures and things like that, for whatever reason is not taboo. That seems to be well within the sort of creative control of what gamers find acceptable for a TO to mess with. So that is all to say that I think having these preset maps is awesome. And when you think of a lot of like competitive games and situations, whether it's on the internet or in sports, the field is determined. The field is set, right? And like the different types of field have impact on the types of game that you get. Even if you're playing the same game, you take that and put it in a different, like even a soccer field or a soccer pitch, which is the same rectangle no matter where it is, will change depending on the climate, will change depending on the crowd that's around it. If you look at if you look at baseball in the United States, literally the dimensions of the field change depending on which ballpark you're at. Some of them have very close high wall. Some of them have very far, deep outfields, so it's hard to get home runs. So, like, again, these things change the game without changing the game. And so I think it's do soccer fields vary in size?
No, they don't. I don't. But I didn't know that about. But I didn't know that about baseball.
Yeah, baseball 100% vary in size. Anyway. For what it's worth, real football has a max and minimum size. That's hilarious. So there you go. So even apparently the dimensions of the field can shift around. But anyway, I think I hope you get my point here. That I really like the preset maps because also from a prep perspective too, you can start looking at it. Like, how do these preset maps, how will I play on them? And which one do I want to get picked? What don't I want to be vetoed? What kind of mind games can you play to try and get your opponent to think one thing over the other? I think it adds a great little thing.
There's loads of scope for changing this up, but for me, and I wrote this in the kind of the FAQ, the worst thing I could feel, especially at the moment with how Old World is, like there's two things I really want to achieve with terrain. I want them to be fun to play on, and I want them to look really good. The second part's much harder, fucking hills, than the first part. But like the bit that would crush me as a tournament organizer would be someone comes up to me and says, "Hey Rob, I played a game, but there was some terrain basically in the way and it ruined my experience. And I just didn't have a game because of how terrain was laid out. Or me and my opponent put terrain down, but he's really clever and he put stuff in my way and I don't really know what to do."
Yeah.
And I would feel crushed that someone's very limited time and weekend was ruined because I didn't put a bit of forethought into making it so they could have a better game. And I know that sounds a little OTT, but like, why wouldn't I shouldn't Warhammer events are such a absolute feral survivor series. They're like, you turn up, you got your box, and they're like, the TO's like, "All right, mate, there's some tables there. Good luck." And like, "What's the plan?" It's like, I put some stuff out, might work, might not. Good luck, off you fuck. And you're like, wow, that's rough.
You figure it out. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, as much friction as you can remove from the experience, the better, right? I fully agree. All right, shall we dive into some of the nitty gritty here?
Yeah, I'd love to. I like the examples. Open ground, one type of terrain. It's example grassy fields, sandy flats, and sun-parched earth. Ooh.
Also, I'd love to point out that they talk about the 7 categories of terrain, and there are 9 of them.
That's good.
That's one of my favorite things. I absolutely love it. So open ground, obviously, it has no effect. It is just basically the standard movement applies. Standard movement rules apply on open ground. There's no big deal. Difficult terrain. This, of course, would be your variety of terrain such as scrub, rocky ground, shallow streams of fords, thick mud, most woods. Because woods. By the way, where'd you go with woods? How did you define a wood? Are they difficult or dangerous?
Dangerous, baby.
You made them dangerous.
Yeah.
Well. Really?
Yeah. Well, I've got some thoughts about dangerous. So this is one of those really interesting things. This is literally a competitive lever that you pull in and out of a game. Like you're absolute, like that reaction is perfect because it should hopefully give to the audience the awareness that is a significant choice, like that a TO has made. Where you could not or could have it, right? Like, so I made it dangerous specifically because I think fast stuff good, right? Those my general thoughts.
Stuff is good.
Fast stuff good, slow stuff bad, and I think that because the terrain is set, don't put your slow stuff behind the dangerous terrain, or more importantly, the fast stuff is probably maybe going to run through the dangerous terrain. That's my general initial thoughts, but like again. That was a kind of a conversation, 20, 30 minutes in the making with me and my friend making through these packs. But see how different it could be if because again, I haven't noted them on the map. So it could be like, they're all difficult at this event. Like it's that easy to change that process, but that's important, right?
Yeah. And in some scenarios, they might be dangerous. In some scenarios, they might be difficult. It does give you that opportunity. So let's cover difficult terrain. And by the way, the reason why I brought that up, folks out there, is that in the rules, it is not predetermined whether or not a wood is difficult or dangerous. It is up to the players to decide. So the terrain organizer needs to make that decision, hopefully for the event before people are at the table, because obviously that could be contentious. I think it's a little unfair that it's left to someone else to decide whether or not it's difficult or dangerous. Anyway, so if any part of a movement of a unit moves through difficult terrain, that unit suffers a -1 modifier to its movement characteristic.
Huge.
Should a unit charge through difficult terrain? This is why difficult terrain, I think, is already pretty big deal, even if it's not dangerous. Should a unit charge through difficult terrain, it makes its charge roll as normal by rolling 2d6, but must discard the highest result rather than the lowest. So that is, I think, just incredibly game-changing. It makes the placement of difficult terrain on the table incredibly meaningful.
It does.
Especially, too, because a lot of the times you don't necessarily have 100% agency on the path that a unit will take when making a charge because of the conditions you must meet when you're making that charge. And by that, I mean you must take the shortest route. You must wheel to maximize. And those two things can often pull you into difficult terrain that you otherwise didn't want to be in, and triggers this, where instead of taking the highest, you take the lowest. So if you roll a 2d6 and you get a 6 and a 1, you go from having made a charge spectacularly with your 6 to having completely whiffed and rolling the 1. Difficult terrain is a huge deal. Finally, a unit that ends its movement or begins a combat phase with 25% or more of its models within difficult terrain becomes disrupted and cannot claim a rank bonus.
Again,
which again, yes, very, very, very huge. These
to
pieces
put that into context, many cavalry units have like first charge, which is the first time that unit ever charges, then it's done. Then it disrupts the rank bonus of an enemy unit. So that's a rule that's such an impactful rule that like it's a once per game use, and this is every time you enter into that piece of terrain or end on that piece of terrain. So like that's to kind of put it into context of just how massive the effect of that is, in my opinion, which I think is good.
Yeah, and MJH Sinclair asks, is it right you can't snake around terrain by pivoting more than once? That is right. You must take the most direct line to your charge target. There's no dipping and dodging unless you're a random mover. Thanks, orcs and goblins. You can't duck and dodge like you otherwise might have. Now, there is, of course, a rule here, and this is a really important distinction. so there's a USR that gives you some benefit to mitigate difficult terrain. Of course, the famous move through cover, but as discovered in a game between myself and the Falcon, resulting in a glorious victory for yours truly, it's not as good as you might think. So models with the special rule do not suffer any modifiers to their movement characteristic for moving through difficult or dangerous terrain. In addition, a model with the special rule may reroll any rolls of 1 when making dangerous terrain tests. Rob, what does a unit not ignore if they move through cover?
They don't the effects of their charges?
That's correct. So even if you are a fancy-pantsy skipping through the fjord wood elf with move through cover on everything, you're still getting screwed over if you're trying to charge through difficult terrain. So that is like a really big thing. You might think, I have moved through cover. This doesn't bother me. Nope, it does. And it can mess you up just like everyone else. What they don't suffer, of course, it's less likely they're going to suffer runes when they go through dangerous, which we'll talk about in 1 second. And they don't suffer the -1. But in general, everyone's kind of screwed over by difficult terrain except for flying models.
Yeah, flying monster scaff. Very strong.
Seems good. Seems good.
Seems good. But
you want to read dangerous?
But that kind of makes sense, right? Like, you should be paying the points for that. All right, dangerous terrain, particularly rocky ground, deep swamps, fast-flowing rivers, and unnatural or magical features. This is why I'm kind of annoyed that initially I'm doing forests. Like, eventually I'd like to change it to not be in a forest and it to be just like, this is a dangerous terrain bit. But anyway, long story short. Right.
Well, I just remember I remember when you were first doing 40K tables, because in 40K, you basically have ruins. End of story. Like, that's what you got. Or at least you did at the time. And I remember you were like very committed to like, okay, that doesn't mean everything has to look the same. So like, you could have all sorts of different whatever a forest is in that particular context. You know what I mean? Like your terrain pieces don't have to be trees.
No. I think short term, just for like the ease of producing so much, which has to be the first thought. Then that has to be the point. And then long term, like, because there's some evocative stuff here. I love the idea of doing rivers. Anyway, long story. There's some really fun stuff. You could do some amazing maps. Is my point. And like, if you have designed a bunch of maps, show me them because I bet they're cool. Right, dangerous terrain hinders movement, just like difficult terrain. Already huge. Any model that begins the movement in dangerous terrain passes through dangerous terrain during its movement or ends its movement in dangerous terrain must take a dangerous terrain test. To make a dangerous terrain test, roll d6 on 2+. The model successfully negotiates the danger of the terrain without incident. On a roll of 1, the model has suffered a terrible mishap and loses a single wound. For the purpose of combat, dangerous terrain is treated as difficult terrain. Note that a model must take a dangerous terrain test for each separate dangerous terrain feature it encounters during a single move.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Something I'd love to call out here, because this is actually one thing that I was speculating on, which is that they removed, in previous versions of this rule, it specifically called out that you weren't allowed to take armor saves of any kind. And they've removed that verbiage. However, others have, I think, convinced me that is because of the way they've worded it now, which is that you lose a single wound. You don't suffer a wound, which allows it to be saved. You've lost it. It's over. So the dangerous terrain test, if it's failed, you broke your ankle. There's no way around it. You're out of the game.
Yeah.
And there are other units as well that will suffer worse on a failed dangerous terrain test. For example, I believe chariots have a special rule that gives them either they have potential to lose more wounds, or maybe they have to take more tests. I can't remember exactly, but you gotta look. There are other special rules that can make dangerous terrain worse. And of course, as we covered on the move through cover special rule, you have the ability to re-roll the 1 if you have moved through cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is super, super useful. But yeah, dangerous terrain could be very, very, very impactful. A couple of games I've played, I ended up with a frenzied unit overrunning through some dangerous terrain. Well, it was a template that was dangerous terrain, and therefore, like, I just started to lose a bunch of Chaos Chosen. I was like, no, God damn it! So yeah, it's gonna be very, very impactful. The thing is, I just want there to be 4 pieces of impassable terrain, and so if I have 2 dangerous pieces of terrain, I effectively have created that same process for myself.
Well,
but just with more steps.
That's actually a really good way to think of it. dangerous terrain is sort of middle ground.
Yeah.
Between
you get a womp for that. No, you get a womp.
Between difficult and impassable, because and that is actually I like that a little bit more. Because if you have because we're going to look at impassable in half a second, which obviously is a terrain piece you can't interact with, you can't go through, you can't wind up on. Then this is like that, except yeah, sure, you can go in it, but it might hurt. Not so bad. Okay.
I also like the idea that you ambush. Not ambush as in the rule ambush, but you set the board state up so because obviously the forests are going to really help you with line of sight and stuff like that, or they're going to stop that. But like you're going to be able to set up some movement. I think you're going to be able to have like a better skill application with something like that versus something that's less impactful. But anyway, we'll keep going. Okay, so the next one is Impassable, part 4 of 7, but really it's 9. Rock spires, deep rivers, sheer cliffs, and most buildings, as well as high linear obstacles such as castle walls and fortifications. Yes. Perfect.
Yes. Okay. So So maybe it's not perfect, the width, because it is a little bit cut off. But anyway, impassable terrain cannot be crossed. Oh, is that you? All right. Cannot be crossed during the course of a battle. Units must go around it. In addition, if it's not possible to align a charging unit to the enemy unit due to the presence of impassable terrain, the charging unit has made a disordered charge. That's actually, there's some examples of that in the rule book. And I've included high linear obstacles under impassable because it actually is more relevant to have it here than as it is in the rule book, which is with low linear obstacles. Because high linear obstacles, for the purposes of movement and combat, high linear obstacles such as castle walls are treated as impassable terrain. There you go.
Perfect.
Which is kind of a bummer because you kind of would want like a castle wall, especially. Maybe they'll probably have a siege pack that comes out eventually. Yeah, you'd want to be able to have guys up top your castle wall or maybe shooting out of it. Anyway.
I think that there's the opportunity. I think there's an opportunity to build some really beautiful boards, really beautiful scenarios, and really beautiful games that are outside of the context of I've got 2,000 points, you've got 2,000 points, you want to have a match, which is basically what we're talking about. Events be damned. Just your local pickup game with your buds. Do you want to do this thing?
Yeah, asymmetrical stuff. Yeah, like stuff where like one side is disadvantaged because of the battlefield. Yeah, there's and that to me, that's where things actually become narrative, right? Like when you have like someone whose odds are not as good as the others, and you must overcome those odds. That's the beginning of a story. Like if you are obsessed with, like, as every Warhammer player is, with balance and making it so that like it's a fair match, you are no longer playing a narrative game. You are playing a game to win, right? Like you're playing a game that it should be set up in a way that is, as equitable to both sides, gives each as little benefit to one side or the other. When you are doing the fun stuff to me, that is creating a narrative battlefield. And like something that's asymmetrical. That is the beginning of narrative to me. Sorry, you just sparked something in me there.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Like,
I've never put my finger on that before, but yeah, like I think the battlefield. I think how the battlefield is set up, literally how the game tells you what kind of game it is.
Yeah, and there's some great opportunities. There's actually some good rules for that. But yeah, passable's impassable. It's great. I argued, so when I was doing the maps, I was like, I think there should be more impassable, but maybe smaller impassable pieces, not sure. And then my friend fed back and they were like, look, no, like you got to remember how difficult it is to wheel these big trays around. I'm like, yeah, like the map is set up before you set up your models. Like he had an example. He's like, what if I put my models behind it? It's going to take ages to wheel and turn. And I was like, don't put them behind there. Like, I don't want,
but I guess what you opened my eyes with your idea of dangerous terrain for us is that when you as the organizer play, and I won't do it this time, but when you as the organizer put an impassable piece, you're making a decision, right? You're making a decision for the players. You can't go here. When you put something that's dangerous, you're giving the player some. So like you're giving them a decision to make, which is, do I risk going there, right? And like And I think that playing with those two things is a really, really cool thing. So I like that you had a moderating influence in your creation process here, because Impassable, yes, is cool. It creates alleys and like lines on the table that must be sort of used. It basically shapes the battlefield. So that, you know where things have to go. But too much of it restricts choice and autonomy. So yeah, I don't know. I like where we're going with this.
Yeah. Like I can see a game of all dangerous terrain, and then just a couple of Orcs and Goblins players being like, "This is where I live, baby. I'm ready." Yeah. Okay, right. Low linear obstacles are walls, hedges, fences, even ditches and furrows. Just in case you thought they might be left out. Okay, even a ditch and a furrow.
Hey, sometimes a dip in the ground sometimes as important as a slightly raised part of the ground.
Agreed. A low linear obstacle is defined as being less than 2 inches high. Anything that is 2 inches high or more is a high linear obstacle. If you make it 2.1 inches, I swear to Jesus.
Right, so help me God.
For the purposes of movement, low linear obstacles are treated as difficult terrain. Should a unit engaged in combat forever find itself straddling a low linear obstacle, it becomes disrupted and cannot claim a rank bonus. Defended low linear obstacles. A unit behind a low linear obstacle can be defended by moving its front rank into base contact with the obstacle. Enemies can charge the defenders as normal, but do not have to physically cross the obstacle. Instead, the front rank of the charging unit moves into base contact with the opposite side of the obstacle, unless it has the Fly X special rule. A unit that charges an enemy behind a defender low linear obstacle makes a disordered charge.
That's pretty huge.
Pretty huge. Now,
so disordered charge, for those of us at home, means that you do not get your initiative bonus.
Big deal.
Which is a big deal. Big deal. There's a really excellent spell in Elementalism that gives you a 5-up and a defended low linear obstacle benefit, and it's fantastic. So yeah, I think and these also will stop a cannonball from bouncing, for example. They are super awesome.
They are, but they are also, one of the interesting things about these is I think these are additions to make later during map creation, because like at the moment it's a lot for not a lot, and I'm like, would I replace a hill forest or a building with one of these at the moment? No, but in the future,
that's interesting.
But in the future,
I've never actually thought of that.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's 6 pieces, right? So like, where am I starting to move around? What am I replacing? What am I doing? Am I
feel
adding?
Like you could make an exception for low linear obstacles. You might be able to get it up to 8 pieces.
See what I mean though? With them moving outside of the bounds.
I didn't. Yeah. I get what you're saying there. Like, it's definitely not as impactful as a forest or a hill or a special feature or anything like that. So yeah, cool. Cool.
But I'm not saying these are done, because again, I'd love to make maps that are like, let's do all low linear objects. What does that look like? And then immediately, there are armies that win, there are armies that lose based on that. Like, not completely wholesale, like it's a 0-1 game, but it's really creative. Actually, like when you actually get to it. So this is why, like, put the flag in the ground. This is some ideas. In the future, so many more ideas, and actually, that's really fun. So I don't think anyone should be mad at that. Woods.
Yeah.
Forests, trees and such.
That was editorial for me. But yes, forests, trees and such.
I'm more editorial.
Woodland boundaries. A woodland terrain feature must have a clearly defined edge. Any model or unit counts as being behind partial cover as long as up to half of the model or up to half of the models within the unit is within the woods. If you could scroll up, please. A boreal gloom. If a wood lies between two models, and if neither model is within the wood, a line of sight can only be drawn between them. If an uninterrupted line can be drawn between their bases without basically you can't see them. You can't see through them. If you're in the wood, you can see through it. If you're on the outside looking through it, it's too arboreally gloomy. You can't see.
But then, if that's a dangerous wood, you're less likely to run in there to be able to see outside of. If that, like, to be in to see out. It's kind of what my thoughts were with woods.
Unless you got a pan pipe and you're a wood elf with a bow and arrow, and you tootle your way through there.
Following Mr. Tumnus into the woods. That's what they're doing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I think wood elves are a great kind of conversation. Interestingly, exactly the same convo in Age of Sigmar where, the Sylvaneth in Age of Sigmar, they can put down a load of forests. In Wood Elves can do the same. And obviously they have a lot of ways of ignoring forests and the effects of forests, or they get bonuses. And so you're now asking yourself, right, okay, how can you design fair maps when one faction it benefits so much more from the inclusion of a thing? But do you include them and then detract from their benefit, or do you exclude them and then give them more benefit? That's a nightmare question, which I don't know what the answer to is.
Yeah, Woodies especially benefit tremendously just from the presence of forest. So, like, aside from having moved through cover, they get all sorts of abilities and items that trigger off of your proximity to a forest. So yeah, that's something to think about for sure. And maybe that is an argument for things like low linear obstacles, right? That but then you lose the line of sight blocking. I don't know, man. It'll have to be a balance, because also Wood Elves just bring their own forest anyway. They have one that they get to place, I think, and then they also have one that they can just cast. With tree singing. So yeah, it's a tough call, but whatever.
I think that might legit be a problem in the future. But again, I FAQ terrain pretty aggressively, because in Age of Sigmar you can bring faction terrain, and there is absolutely no guidance from Warhammer or Age of Sigmar game developers about how this works. There's just some terrain, and what you'll see in a match is someone just put a piece of terrain down, put a wizard behind it, and be like, so it's an impassable obstacle. You actually can't get my wizard. I get 3 points. And then someone's like, cool, which you can't do at my events, because I obviously stopped that from happening, because that's insane. It's insane. Again, because that really
seems uninteractive.
Exactly. And again, why would I let you turn up to an event and then hide something to do that? Because someone's paid to have 5 fun games, right? It's an odd setup.
Can you do me a favor? Can we scroll up? Just because I've done this before where I've miscounted, but I'm pretty sure hills are the 7th category of terrain. Can we just so 1, 2, sure. We got 3 on each one. 1, 2, 3.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're at hills. Is 7.
All right, cool. Just for the record, we're now at the 7th of the 9 of the terrain types out of the 9 actual terrain types. We got hills.
Hills, baby. The hill to die on. Ground that is taller than other ground. Perfect. or a rock taller. A hill provides a vantage point. A unit on a hill can fire with 1 additional rank compared to a unit on flat ground. Watch out. And a unit that is entirely on a hill can draw line of sight across or through other units or models that are not themselves on a hill. And any unit that is not on a hill can draw a line of sight to a unit that is entirely on a hill across or through other units or models. And then finally, we've got beyond the crest. If a hill lies between 2 models and neither model is upon the hill, if a line of sight can only be drawn between them, if an uninterrupted line can be drawn between their bases without crossing over or through the hill. Although I now do have an image of a hill with a hole dug out by some dwarfs underneath it in some hilarious fashion, where they're both on top of the hill shooting and also below the hill seeing through the hill. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In the perfect terrain feature.
Absolutely. They also have hills. So how have you moderated your position on hills? Have you found your feelings changing or adjusting on hills? Where are we with hills? Because they were an issue for you at first.
So so like with trees, like with forests, like the bonus, like everything I feel should be pointed flat on the ground. I don't have this idea that a cannon or an artillery unit or a shooting unit was pointed with the idea that it was always going to be able to put a hill in its territory to be able to shoot from it, because that would be odd. I think as a balancing mechanic. So I don't assume that, and therefore being on a hill gives you a natural bonus which you aren't pointed to have. So what you're effectively doing there is you're giving a unit or an army some level of upgrade for free. And so I've decided to not fucking care.
Beautiful.
I just have been whatever. There'll be some hills. You can use them or not use them. The game's very complex. There's lots of moving parts. If in the future it's a problem, I'll just change them.
Perfect. And I would also say this, that right now, and this is a feelsy thing. This is a gut feeling thing. Right now, artillery almost feel pointless. They almost feel like they're completely irrelevant, and that includes cannons, rock throwers. Maybe there's some unique ones that are worthwhile.
Why?
But they why? First of all, line of sight. So line of sight, especially for a cannon, is a big problem because other models are going to block your line of sight pretty nicely and easily. Can block. Essentially, you have to be able to see the spot on the ground that you start your cannonball bounce from. So that means that you're able to mitigate a cannonball pretty easily through the placing of your chaff or through the placement of your big infantry blocks. And then also cannonballs just get stopped by much more easily by things like monsters or monstrous creatures, monstrous infantry, monstrous cavalry. So cannons, and then on top of all of that, the cannon itself is much less deadly. It has a much lower AP. It's at -2. It used to be -1 billion. And it has a lower potential output for its damage that it can deal. So cannons have been significantly neutered, mostly, I would say, by line of sight rules. So having a hill there gives a cannon a chance. However, now even then, they don't. When you're on a hill, something that's important to remember is that you don't see over other pieces of terrain. So while you can see over intervening units, you're now not ignoring the hill that's across from you or the forest that's across from you. So like that's still going to be an issue. So, and then when you look at a thing like a rock thrower, which is probably the better of the two archetypes, again, these are, they're not quite hot takes at this point, but they're still opinions. They're not likely to hit their target. You have to center on the unit now. So like, and also base sizes increase, meaning that there's less things that are covered underneath them. So like they basically have, if you want something that used to do what a cannon did, i.e. something to go try and hit a, single large entity unit like your evil dragons and whatever, I'd say your rock throwers are probably your better option than a cannon. Because at least they're never going to be completely blocked from line of sight. But anyway, long story short, artillery getting a little bit of a buff, but from a hill in a deployment zone occasionally. I don't think it's going to be groundbreaking because I think people who go artillery heavy are already going to be, walking into a pretty strong headwind just with the way the game works right now.
Yeah, it's kind of where I settled with it. I was like, look, like how many, looking at volley fire, looking at other stuff, looking at ballistic skill shooting, looking at a bunch of different things. I was like, you're going to have to work really hard, I think, to capitalize on this. And also like hill size as well. There's only so much you get on X. And I was just like, whatever.
Yep.
So that's kind of like where I'm at with hills. And, if I end up like with woods, I'm probably at the minute more concerned about woods. So like in the future, if those things become more of a problem, then I'll just change those around. That's what's good.
100%.
You kind of need to start somewhere so you can be wrong to get right. So
absolutely,
that's where we're at.
It's an iterative process, my friend.
Let's go. Well, we are on the first edition of Old World. Can't believe they got it right so quick.
They got a lot right, man. They did. They did. I'm having so much fun. All right.
Battlefield decoration: a stack of barrels or a roadside shrine. So this is less than 2 inches across at its widest point, ignored for the purposes of both movement and combat, as if it were not there. However, it may obscure line of sight. Obsessed with the idea of just one lad hiding behind a letterbox or something.
Barrel. Yeah. Obviously, other options for what I think has often been called scatter terrain. But yeah, I do like that though that they did include that they aren't completely useless, like that you can get like a -1 to hit from them. So that's great. They're just little fun things. This would be the 8th by my count terrain type, and the final terrain type, which I think is the most fun.
The special features.
Special features, an important landmark. Go for it. Take us through it. All right. So again, an important landmark. So actually, they do define a few of them, which I don't include in this presentation. But anyway, think of this as your buildings, your large important shrine, like your Tower of Sigmar, what have you. So they're features that give you a benefit if you're close to them, and you can control them in one of two ways. One, proximity controlled. Can be controlled by a unit that is within 6 inches of it, that has a unit strength of 5 or more, and that is not fleeing. If 2 or more eligible enemy units are within 6 inches, the unit closest to the special feature controls it. If two enemy units are equally close, the feature is contested and neither unit controls it. So basically, it's just sort of like, that's when it's a thing. And the other one is you can control it by occupying it. A unit can occupy a special feature by moving into base contact with it during the remaining move subphase of its movement phase, whilst a unit occupies a special feature so this is to be clear, two different types of special features. They are either controlled by being close to it or controlled by being inside of it. So whilst a unit occupies a special feature, it cannot charge. It can shoot and cast spells and is considered to have a 360-degree vision arc from the special feature itself. It can be shot at and be targeted by spells. Again, remember, magic missiles do not roll to hit. By a unit or wizard that can draw a line of sight to the special feature. However, the unit is considered to be behind full cover. All measurements to or from that unit that occupies a special feature are made to or from the base of the feature rather than the individual models. Special features do not tend to be particularly large, which is a weird thing to say because, yes, they do. Therefore, they can only be occupied by a single unit. Unless it is fleeing, a unit occupying a special feature can leave it during the remaining move subphase of its movement phase by making a follow-up move or by pursuing an enemy. Simply place the unit in formation so that at least one model is in base contact with the feature. The unit's movement then ends.
Woo.
There you go.
We did it. Thanks for sticking with us through that. So you could do some really fun stuff with this. You can make, you could even like do some scenarios with this with objective control and some other fun stuff, especially if you're doing some story-based things, which I think could be rad. And these are very, very interesting. But again, requires even more thought to throw in there. So special features are like the deluxe upgrade pack. These are for your really fun missions.
Yeah, and they're intended to be the thing that, takes that center space of the table, which is interesting. So it gives you something to fist fight over. And then they go on to define, again, I just ran out of time last night, but they go on to define a few examples of them, which also leaves a lot of opportunity for defining other ones, like castle walls and stuff. But they have Arcane Monolith, Monument of Glory, so those would be proximity controlled. Most buildings, I think, would fall under the Dark Ruins archetype, and then of course the famous Tower, also available and defined in the rules. And those have quite a lot of interesting and fun things that they do.
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is just create a very standard pack for the 12 tables I have at my venue. I can run events, and I'll be like, cool. And then a table at a time, I'm going to be like, okay. Right, let's take some of this, and what can I do as a cool map? Make a map, play it with my friends for a little bit, try it out, see if it works, and then, stick it into the mix maybe. I don't know. I think Old World is such an amazingly creative process, and I've said this, one of the things I love about it is your army building is so, unique and interesting. Your play style is so unique and interesting because the game doesn't force you, you force it, and so the way that you play is in the maps and the missions are also going to be very interesting to kind of kit bash. That's probably the best way to describe it, is missions are really kit bashable in the Old World, very much like units, very much like, army lists, there's so much room and opportunity for creativity, which I think is great. And so it's really, really fun, but it is, pun intended, mountain of work. So
yes. Well, we're a month into chats. I think we got some folks rolling their eyes and are you guys done reading rules yet? Are we almost done getting through all the rules for this game? No, actually, we're not. There are now 16 different factions to talk about.
But those could be hot takes, so that's fine.
Yeah, we could get a little hot tacky on that one. But yeah, I think it's just, again, I think this really highlights that rules writing is not necessarily always an encumbrance, right? It is each rule gives life to something that is happening on the table. So the less rules you have, the less specific things are happening. So you might have things that are more elegant, but the game itself might feel a little more bland at times. That doesn't mean that you can't have tremendous amount of fun with simpler, and by simpler rule sets, I legitimately just mean rule sets that have less rules in them or less styles of interaction. But this is a game that is designed to be quite girthy. And I tell you, because of the amount of referencing and looking up that I've had to do, even playing online, my games have been lasting quite a long time right now. Like I'm not playing fast. So it will take a while to get to a place where, your average event player can get through a game in 2.5, 3 hours. But I do feel like once that system mastery is a little bit more established amongst the community, amongst people, I do feel like this game will play really well. But we do have to make these decisions, create these things, answer these problems to get there. It's not a game that is ready to go necessarily out of the box.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure there are loads of people with different opinions about ways that they're going to do stuff. And I'm really excited to read about it because honestly, like at certain points when I was putting the map out, I was like, what did I say at one point? I said to my friend, he's like, well, how do you start? I'm like, I start by aesthetically creating it. And then I work backwards, and I'm like, I've made a problem here. These are too close. These are too close to the edge. So that's how I always start, and then I work backwards from there. And it's fun. Like it's fun, and there should be some amazing and beautiful games based on like having some really nice terrain. So I'm super excited about it. Sorry for taking us through the most boring section of all of Warhammer.
I don't think it's boring at all. I think it's actually interesting to me how Warhammer so frequently completely ignores terrain, more often than not in like 40K, and I know for sure in AOS, terrain is kind of a distant afterthought, and that actually again is something that makes the game land. Even in fantasy, previous version, 8th edition, terrain was super lame. It was not interesting. It didn't really do much. And now because of the abstraction of line of sight, and because they've added 7-9 different features that all have very specific and important impacts on how units interact, you've got a really interesting game state that can be shaped and created on the battlefield. I don't find it boring at all. It's to me really, really cool. And the calling it out and making some like clear, cogent thoughts about how do we want to have this set up to create some cool interactions and cool games. I think it's a great conversation. So don't sell yourself short.
I feel I bored everyone.
I think you're good.
I feel I bored everyone.
Colonel Cabbage, we will not only ask Warhol to improve their maps, but they will be incorporating Rob's map pack into Warhol.eu.
Yes.
So that will be happening. You can actually test these out in virtual space probably very soon.
I think I'll set up and
then we'll get lots of feedback.
I'll set up a terrain feedback channel in the Discord. So people could just be like, these are my thoughts about terrain. Off we go. Pop off. And I'll be like, I'll read them and then cry. That's what I'll do. Yeah,
that's okay. Yeah, Rob takes criticism like just in stride all the time. Like it doesn't even.
It's constant. When you stream every day on Twitch, you can't be wrong. Yeah, because they will come for you on a daily basis.
They're coming for you, pal.
Anyway,
they're at the gates.
I think that's been a really good chat. Have you got any games? Is it this Saturday your event?
Saturday. Yeah, that's my first in-person RTT. I played 2 or 3 in-person games as well. But yeah, that'll be my first in-person action at X-Planet Games out in Mississauga here in Southern Ontario. And I'm really, really excited. I'm going to bring my orcs and goblins. And then after that, I'll probably say that list is set and that's where I want it. And I'll start working on ogres because I'm undecided. I know I'm bringing ogres and orcs and goblins with me to the UK when I arrive for Old World: The Resurrection at the end of March on Easter weekend. However, I haven't decided what army I'll want to play. I might play the big boys. I might not.
Okay, well that's pretty exciting. Is it a Shark Tank? I've heard Tech Priest Dickey is going, so it might be a Shark Tank.
Well, then it is. I mean, third place finisher of the first Square Base GT, Tech Priest Dickey, in the house.
Okay,
so he's not messing around. I assume there's definitely some tryhards coming, so I'm sure we'll have fun.
Okay, that's pretty exciting as well. All right, well, listen, have a great time at the event. Thanks to everyone on the on the Squarebase page for helping support the show. Thanks to everyone in the comments and the podcast, Thirsty Bros. You've all been wonderful. So if you have enjoyed the show, do let us know what you think in the comments. That'd be great. And see you all soon. Goodbye.